Hello there, I'm Catherine Nicholson, and this is the Europe Report on France 24, your daily guide to this weekend's European Parliament elections. Well, this time tomorrow, voting will have begun in the Netherlands and perhaps more watched the United Kingdom. They're being the first to hit the polls. In the UK, the Prime Minister has been under mounting pressure over her new plan on how to leave the European Union. Lawmakers from her Conservative Party have been discussing whether they can change party rules to force her to stand down. Well, on Tuesday, Theresa May outlined 10 points in a speech. She's now confirmed that she'll publish her new withdrawal agreement bill that MPs will vote on Friday. Already, scores of MPs from her Conservative Party have publicly declared that they don't intend to vote for that bill when it comes to Parliament. That's expected to happen in June. Well, both leading British parties are facing criticism for their stances over Brexit. Here's Theresa May and the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, speaking earlier in Parliament.
The withdrawal agreement bill will be published on Friday, so the House has the maximum possible time to study its detail. If Parliament passes the bill before the summer recess, the UK will leave the EU by the end of July. Reject it, and all we have before us is division and deadlock. We risk leaving with no deal, something this House is clearly against. We risk stopping Brexit altogether, something the British people would simply not tolerate. We risk creating further divisions. At a time when we need to be acting together in the national interest.
No Labour MP can vote for a deal on the promise of a Prime Minister who only has days left in her job. No matter what the Prime Minister offers, it's clear no compromise would survive the upcoming Tory leadership contest.
Well, Theresa May's support among the public is seen to be collapsing too. This is the latest poll we've had in from the agency YouGov. The single-issue Brexit party, as you can see, running away on 37%. Then there's the overtly pro-Remain Liberal Democrats on 19%. The opposition Labour Party have slipped once again to third place. They're polling at 13%. The pro-Remain Greens polling at 12%. And Theresa May's Conservatives still in fifth place, but falling now to just 7%. Well, the leaders of the two top polling parties debated earlier this Wednesday. Brexit Party founder Nigel Farage telling the Lib Dems leader Vince Cable that he favours leaving the EU without a formal deal, meaning the UK would take the unprecedented step of trading purely on WTO terms. He said he believes that the EU will, quote, come to us with a deal. Vince Cable, meanwhile, held that Brexit is bad for the United Kingdom and said if it came down to no deal or revoking Article 50, he would revoke.
Can only happen if Brexit stops. The way we move on is by stopping it, and we stop it in a democratic way by going back to the people and giving them the choice of whether they wish to accept the government's deal or to stay.
And when we vote to leave again, will you just ignore it again?
I will not. I will accept the result.
Really?
Absolutely clear.
Well, why not the last one,
because this is a confirmatory referendum. It is a fundamentally different question from the last.
So what's the question?
But you want us.
So what's the question, Vince?
Well, there are two fundamental.
Go on.
There are two deals on.
Give me the question.
The government's deal and the deal we've already got. I know you want the WT option. If that's, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. That we take that on and we debate it as well.
Well, staying with Nigel Farage, a lavish home in London's Chelsea neighbourhood, a chauffeur-driven car, trips to the United States, those some of the gifts received by the Brexit Party leader and sitting MEP from a billionaire Leave supporter, gifts which are now under investigation by the European Parliament. The UK's Channel 4 News revealed the donations last week. Mr Farage has said that they were nothing to do with politics. However, other British MEPs requested the investigations, as Mr Farage was still an MEP at the time and did not mention the gifts in the Parliament's Register of Interests. Well, some news from here in France now. The Greens' time has come, so says the lead candidate for the ecology list, Yannick Jadot, joined in Paris by the co-leader of the Greens in the European Parliament, Ska Keller, for his final campaign rally. Mr Jadot hoping to ride a wave of support for environmental parties that's been seen in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands and elsewhere. Take a listen.
The Greens' time has come. The others have had their chance. The Socialists, the Liberals, the centre-right. They've had their chance and they've failed. They failed on poverty. They failed on social justice, on democracy, on the environment. Now it's our turn.
Well, let's stick with that green theme. Global warming is a clear and present danger for many Europeans living in coastal areas. The European Environment Agency has predicted sea levels are likely to keep on rising. Well, for low-lying, sea-surrounded Denmark, that is a particular worry. France 24's reporting team on the France 24 Europe tour went to the coastal city of Sonderborg to find out how locals there are preparing for a new reality.
Sonderborg in southern Denmark. This little port town of 28,000 inhabitants is on the front line of global warming. Boy Benson is seeing the effects for himself in his fishing nets.
You see new species here in the Baltic and the area. There's coming sardine and sardelle, horse mackerel, and other species only live further south.
The sea is warmer, but also getting higher. Here it's risen 15 centimetres over the last century due to melting glaciers. But what worries Boy most are the storms, which have become more and more frequent in winter.
The wind can be a problem over the years, but we have some damage on the coast and on the new promenade we have in here by the town.
The port bears the brunt of it and is regularly flooded. Last January, the sea rose 1.60 meters above normal levels. Henrik Littor Jensen works for Sonderborg Council. He says locals have learned to live with the floods.
It was up on the wall, so the whole street here was affected by, and obviously the whole street was closed as well. People who are living here, they will basically take the sandbags and they will build up a sandbag wall at the door here.
The local firemen are equipped with a mobile pumping station in their truck, just in case.
Each pump is 1,200 litres per minute, and we got 6 pumps, so it's about 7,200 litres per minute.
Around the harbour, new buildings are being put up with flood protection built in. This luxury hotel will soon open its doors. It's designed to use little energy and is built 4 meters above sea level.
We have 3 big pipes here that are taking air into the hotel, and they are also placed 4 meters above normal sea level.
Mads von Gard Thomsen has become an expert in preventing floods. 7 years ago, the engineer designed 5 rainwater retention ponds for this meadow, with a capacity of 4,000 meters cubed.
The only problem is that the pressure in the sewer system is getting too high, and that causes flooding on streets. We take the pressure off the sewer systems and put the water to store in the basins.
Sonderborg has been working on its green transition for 12 years. Its aim is to be carbon neutral within 10 years. Efforts that have earned it awards and support from the European Union. A small coastal city that's leading the way in the increasingly critical fight against floods. After Denmark, we're heading next to the Netherlands. In the north of the country, Groningen has the largest gas field in Europe. It's a huge asset for the economy, but the government has decided to stop extraction by 2030, as it's been causing quakes and damaging homes. The Netherlands have decided to replace gas with cleaner energy, as we'll be showing you in our next report on the France 24 Europe tour.
We will indeed catch up with Clovis and the team tomorrow. Back on dry land, though, today is International Biodiversity Day. So we thought we would do a biodiversity-themed show and tell for you with Roxanne Rinel from our very own Europe desk. Hi there, Roxanne. Now, you've brought me a present, and if our viewers can see this, we've got a jar of pollen here. What else have you brought?
Well, I have a jar of honey.
Okay,
and
I can see a link.
Beautiful plants. And I brought these to tell you about the one thing they have in common.
Okay, I'm thinking bees.
Correct.
Wonderful.
And more precisely, of course, about how the EU helps us protect our bees and how pesticides are involved.
Okay, so how does the EU protect bees?
Well, it's a story that begins with some pesticides called neonicotinoids, also known as neonics. Unless you're a farmer or European affairs journalist, chances are you'll never have heard of them. but they're actually the most commonly used pesticides in the world. But in the past few years, studies confirmed that they were also bee killers.
We've got some lovely pictures of bees behind us as you say that. How so? How do these neonics work on bees?
Well, the studies confirmed that the chemicals that go into neonics actually mess with bees' brains, meaning, for example, they lose the ability to find their way back to their hive and end up dying. According to Greenpeace in Europe, the total population of bees dropped by a quarter between 1985 and 2005. More recently, the French Ministry for Farming said that during the last 2 winters, 1/3 of bee colonies had died, which is enormous and worrying because bees play, as you know, a very important role in pollinating, well, the rest of the biodiversity. And so to stem that phenomenon, member states decided to completely ban 3 types of neonicotinoids for outdoor use. That was in April of last year. But they remain legal for agriculture in permanent greenhouses.
Okay, so quite a big ban. Is this story settled at this point?
It might not. There are still 2 other types of neonicotinoids for farming that have not been banned at EU level. But as always in EU law, member states remain free to go further. And France did, for example, it banned all of the 5 neonics in 2018.
All right, so good news for bees, if they're in France. Obviously, though, being serious about it, there's an impact for farmers, of course, unable to use these pesticides on their crops. There must be a cost there. Should farmers be worried that there are going to be more bans, more restrictions on their work?
Well, paradoxically, not necessarily. And here's why. Bear with me. In 2013, the European Food Safety Authority created something called the Bee Guidance Document. It's a methodology that's meant to ensure that regulators properly account for bees in their risk assessments. This is stricter than any method used in the past, and it's the basis for the neonicotinoids ban, but it was guidance, not legally binding. So since then, member states failed to include the bee guidance into its permanent pesticide assessment procedure.
Okay, a little bit complicated then. So let me get this straight. Neonics were banned, the 3 of them. That was based on a rule that wasn't actually official. And that rule still isn't official, even though there is a ban.
That's right. A special committee called the SCOPAF has been dragging its feet to approve this method. So much so, in fact, that the Commission has started a process to review it.
And the EU, of course, full of acronyms, as I'm sure our viewers are aware. SCOPAF, what does that mean?
SCOPAF stands for Standing Committee in Plants, Animals, Food and Feed. It's essentially made up of experts appointed by member states. Now, officials say this review is meant to try and find a method that everybody would finally agree on. It's been 6 years now that the SCOPAF committee is meant to approve some kind of official guidelines. On the other hand, I called some environmental advocates like the group Polinis, and they're worried that this process could cause a major step backwards in environmental protection.
All right, we'll have to keep an eye on that then. Thank you very much, Roxanne Runel, for today's Show and Tell. Well, let's move on now with our daily fact check. Today, our reporters have looked into a statement by a former French minister who criticised the EU for a lack of political clout on the world stage. How true is the claim? Well, take a listen.
The European Union, an economic giant, but a foreign policy dwarf. That's the opinion of former French Foreign Minister Michel Alliot-Marie, and in many ways she's not entirely wrong. The EU makes up 7% of the world's population, but represents 21% of global GDP. That's second only to the United States and ahead of China. So the EU is an economic powerhouse. But what about its political clout? Henry Kissinger is often misquoted as saying, "Who do I call if I want to cool Europe?" He might not have actually said it, but the sentiment has an element of truth. The EU does have one high representative for foreign affairs, but its 28 member states still retain ultimate control of their individual foreign policies. And that lack of clear leadership leaves the EU somewhat toothless on major issues like the Middle East conflict and forced to watch as Donald Trump unravels the Iran nuclear treaty. There is one exception. The Ukrainian crisis pushed the EU's 28 member states to stand together to impose sanctions on Russia. The EU doesn't stint in deploying its economic largesse, contributing 75 billion euros to overseas development programs, making it the world leader in philanthropy. But its priorities are often different to other global actors. Militarily, the EU lags behind the other major players, spending only 1.4% of its GDP on defence, compared to more than 3% for the US and over 4% by Russia. On the world stage, then, the EU punches above its weight economically, but politically, it's more of a featherweight.
There you go. Well, before we leave you, a reminder that voting starts tomorrow in the European elections, Thursday. So first to go to the polls will be the UK and the Netherlands. On Friday and Saturday, we've got 4 more member states joining them and the other 22 member states voting on Sunday. Do remember, we'll have the French results live for you at 8 p.m. Paris time, and then a whole evening of special coverage here on France 24. For now, that's it from me and the team. We hope to see you Thursday, 2:45 p.m. Paris time for our next update. Bye for now.